Students who got expelled for wearing religious symbols to school. What happened? My name is Amir Khalid, and I spent 3 years at Westfield High watching my classmates disappear one by one for wearing crosses, hijabs, yarmulkes, and turbans. The policy didn't start as an outright ban on religious expression. It crept in slowly through dress code amendments that Principal Hartley introduced during my sophomore year under the umbrella of maintaining secular learning environments and preventing religious conflict between student groups. The first version just prohibited head coverings in class, which they claimed was about identification for security purposes after a minor vandalism incident. My friend Nadia wore hijab and had to remove it during all 7 periods, sitting exposed in classrooms while teachers pretended not to notice her discomfort. She'd put it back on between classes, but the constant removal and adjustment throughout the day felt like a deliberate humiliation. The administration framed it as treating everyone equally, but somehow baseball caps and beanies worn by non-Muslim students didn't get the same scrutiny. By the end of that semester, 3 Muslim girls had transferred to other schools rather than continue the daily ritual of unveiling themselves for the institution's comfort. The policy expanded that spring to include all visible religious jewelry after someone complained about a student wearing a large wooden cross outside his shirt. Principal Hartley sent out a memo explaining that symbols exceeding 1 inch in any direction created distractions in classroom settings and needed to be tucked inside clothing or removed entirely. My Christian classmates started hiding their crosses under shirts, while Jewish students took off their Star of David necklaces at the door. The Sikh sophomore who wore a small kirpan ceremonial blade under his shirt got called to the office and told he was violating weapons policy, even though the kirpan was religious requirement and properly secured. He tried explaining the spiritual significance and that it had never been removed from its sheath, but Hartley insisted school safety superseded religious accommodation. The whole thing felt like a test to see how much they could restrict before anyone pushed back. Most families complied because they didn't want their kids targeted, or because they believed the school must have legal grounds for these rules. My parents emigrated from Egypt and were so grateful for American educational opportunities that they encouraged me to follow whatever rules the school set, even ones that felt wrong. My mother kept saying we were guests in this country and needed to respect their institutions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being asked to erase parts of ourselves to make others comfortable. That's when I started paying closer attention to which students were being pulled aside for dress code violations and which ones were ignored despite similar infractions. The pattern became obvious once you knew to look for it. By junior year, the policy had evolved into a complete ban on visible religious symbols anywhere on school property, including parking lots and sports fields. They called it the Unified Secular Campus Initiative and presented it as promoting inclusivity by ensuring no student felt marginalized by exposure to others' religious practices. The irony of marginalizing religious students to prevent marginalization seemed lost on the administration. The new rules prohibited crosses, hijabs, yarmulkes, turbans, bindis, Islamic prayer beads, rosaries, and any other items deemed religious in nature. Students arriving at school wearing prohibited items were sent to the office to remove them or call parents for alternative clothing. Repeat violations resulted in suspension, and the policy explicitly stated that religious freedom didn't extend to public school campuses because education was a secular institution. I watched my friend Isaac get written up in September for wearing his yarmulke to first period. He'd worn it every day since freshman year without incident, but now suddenly it was creating a hostile environment for non-religious students who might feel pressured to adopt religious practices. The logic was absurd, but Isaac complied after the first warning because he couldn't risk suspension affecting his college applications. He started carrying his yarmulke in his backpack and putting it on immediately after leaving campus, this small act of resistance against a policy that made him choose between his identity and his education. The ban affected different religious groups in different ways, creating this hierarchy of whose faith could be more easily hidden. Christian students could tuck crosses inside their shirts and maintain their religious identity invisibly, while Muslim girls who wore hijab and Sikh boys who wore turbans had no equivalent option. Their religious practice was inherently visible and couldn't be concealed to satisfy the school's secular requirements. This meant the policy, despite claiming neutrality, had a disparate impact on certain religious communities while barely affecting others. I started documenting who was getting written up and for what, keeping a notebook with dates and descriptions and outcomes. The administration claimed they were enforcing rules uniformly, but my notes showed that Christian students received warnings, while Muslim and Sikh students received immediate suspensions for first-time violations. The selective enforcement made the discriminatory intent obvious, but proving it required more evidence than one student's notebook observations. In October, everything escalated when a senior named Simran Kaur showed up wearing her turban as she had every day for 4 years. She was Sikh and wore the turban as part of her religious practice and identity. Principal Hartley intercepted her in the front hallway before first period and demanded she remove it immediately or leave campus. Simran explained that the turban wasn't just a head covering, but a sacred article of faith that she couldn't simply take off and put back on like a hat. That's when things got out of control. The rest of the story is linked below.